Enablement is changing behavior. Enablement is asking someone to do something differently tomorrow or the next week that they weren't able to do. And now that they have these new skills or behaviors, they can do that.
Welcome to Revenue Insights. We're joined by revenue leaders from some of the highest growth companies. Together, we explore how they built their revenue teams, the journeys they've been on, and the lessons they've learned along the way. Revenue Insights is brought to you by Ebsta. We're an AI-first revenue intelligence platform designed to help you close more deals, retain more customers, and forecast better. Enjoy the podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Revenue Insights podcast. We're thrilled to have Ivy Holt, the head of Global Revenue Enablement at PagerDuty. With over 18 years of experience in sales, operations, and strategy, Ivy has led transformative changes in organizations across SaaS and digital media. At PagerDuty, she became instrumental in aligning global teams and enabling them to deliver exceptional customer experiences while driving revenue growth. Ivy's insights into the evolving role of RevOps and sales enablement and customer success will prove invaluable lessons for leaders in any industry. Welcome to the show, Ivy.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Ivy, you've had a very diverse career from sales enablement to leading global teams in organizations like PagerDuty and Pendo. Can you share a bit about your journey and what drew your career into RevOps and sales enablement?
Yeah, absolutely. So, ironically, the phrase enablement years ago was not really even a career choice or aspiration. I started right out of college selling radio, selling yellow pages onto digital media. And it, again, kind of the original subscription is, for those of you watching at home, we used to have something called the Yellow Pages. It was the original first Google. In that experience, I learned the true secret magic that comes along with cold calling all the way up to strategic level conversations where it takes multiple meetings and multiple people to have those conversations. And kind of in that path and in that journey, I ended up in a management role from being in a leadership development program at GE. All roads led to, I was a really great resource that could scale internally. So instead of me kind of individually meeting with customers and selling one deal at a time, I was promoted into a training and then a management position across a couple of states with AT&T. That landed me again kind of in the original subscription space. Red Hat, I am in North Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina, where Red Hat is globally headquartered. Huge, incredible opportunity. It was an organization where the reps sell free software. So trying to explain that to your parents, right? I'm going into a career where I'm using the word enablement. My mother said, enable, that's usually, that has a negative connotation when we think about when you enable something. But the reality is revenue enablement is providing a space and a place where we know that sales and marketing and product all need to have consistent messaging, consistent conversations, and a consistent approach. And I feel like where it's, again, kind of that magic has happened is having a communications and journalism background coupled with my true sales experience has been a really great segue. And for me to be able to translate from the land of speak from a sales rep to what the IT or technology group is trying to ask, all the way from the speeds and feeds that we need to translate into customer language for our products and services. And so I was at Red Hat almost 7 years. I was in at Pendo and then was recruited by PagerDuty. And I love the technology space. I love fast growing technology. I think that's the part where, having been a seller for a long time and then having hired sellers to go into training, enablement, professional development has been a great opportunity, because the reality is, in that fast pace, it's constantly changing. You've got products launching, messages evolving, competitors being introduced. And I think, again, from a sales perspective, there's never a dull moment, and no 2 weeks are ever the same.
Makes a lot of sense. And I think one of the biggest challenges is aligning the disparate go-to-market teams. If you ask the guys in the sales team or the marketing department, all of the RevOps or enablement teams, kind of how they operate, they'll all give you slightly different answers more often than not. So how do you deal with kind of herding the cats and getting everybody to kind of align and work towards a common goal?
I love this question, because I think that my day job, it's herding cats, or we like to say goat rodeo, also maybe just a Southern thing in North Carolina, but it is incredibly accurate. There are so many different business owners within any corporation. And I think, again, having a background in sales and communications has been a really great foray for me to be able to have conversations at authentic levels across different groups, across varying seniority levels as well. I think a big part of the success is around communications and getting people aligned from the very beginning. And, there's a variety of ways that you can do that. You can have advisory councils, you can have advisory boards, you can have one-on-one meetings. You can also be very intentional with, here is what the enablement organization does and how we do it. Then meeting with marketing and product marketing, because again, marketing and product marketing are different than field marketing. Really trying to learn the players in all of these different spaces is also another critical facet where if you really want to be able to translate what's happening in the business to the field who kind of have a myopic lens, like my job is to go out, I've got a list of customers, I need to be talking like every day, I should be in Salesforce, I'm supposed to be creating Slack group channels with my customer base. How do we as an organization, which is I think where enablement fits really well, how do we distill the noise from product, from IT, from the people team, from legal, from even the sales organization itself? What I've kind of created in the organizations where I have been employed, I've created a translation layer. Essentially, if we can take all of this noise and refine it to news that matters for the field. That for me is a way that we have done something very intentional to try and, again, just take the distractions out, take the noise away, and distill the messaging and prioritization for the field so that they know quarter over quarter, week over week, okay, here are the most important things that I need to know, do, say, show with my customers. But a lot of that, again, it's good old like relationship building, communications, and again, being really clear what's above the line and below the line. And I think that's a part where a lot of times enablement, it's like I've seen it referred to as the junk drawer. Like everything oh, that's an enablement problem. Oh, we need to talk to the enablement team. Oh, that's something where we need to get training and development involved. And I think the reality is enablement is one piece of it, but a lot of times, for those of you all who have done change management, we talk about awareness and desire and communications. And a lot of times, many leaders, sales leaders, product leaders, marketing leaders, come to me and say, oh, we need to enable on this XYZ. A lot of times we're talking about a communication. That is not the same. Enablement is changing behavior. Enablement is asking someone to do something differently tomorrow or the next week that they weren't able to do. And now that they have these new skills or behaviors, they can do that. So again, I think it's a combination of communications and then alignment on what the enablement function is meant to serve. And again, when everything is urgent and everything is important, it's very hard for a sales rep to actually consume any of it.
That's fascinating, and I've written down lots of notes there. I love this idea of taking all the content and turning it into that translation layer, and really talking the language of the people that are receiving the information. And I also love the point you made about enablement. Really is about changing behavior. It's not just about learning a particular tool. Do you think is enablement and RevOps, do they work closely together? Is it one thing? Is it just the same name for two different things, or do you see them as two separate roles?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I would say there's been an evolution. A lot of my friends in the industry, we've kind of all talked about. Initially when I was at Red Hat, the enablement function sat under the people team. So we reported up to the vice president of people because when you thought of enablement and training, professional development, so that's where the HR courses lived and the compliance courses lived. So we sat in this place where we weren't as connected to sales. And I think that, again, sometimes that was a really positive thing because we had the opportunity to work with other professional development organizations. But it was kind of the island of misfit toys. Like, we're not really a people team, right? We're not really HR. A lot of us were ex-sellers. So while I was there, again, transitions happened, IBM acquisition happened. We ended up being moved into RevOps or sales ops. That I've seen in the past, and even when I was interviewing for this role, a lot of there's kind of two ways that revenue enablement sits. They either roll up to the head of sales or the head of revenue, or they're kind of being, I won't say appropriated, but like they are being put under the sales ops organization. And I think this is where there is definitely a difference between operations and enablement. I would say I'm pretty emphatic about this. So in my current org, I roll up to operations and strategy. What I am very much on message, as well as my team, I need to enable the strategies you all are articulating. I'm not going to create the account planning strategy. My team is going to enable the strategy. I am not going to create the forecasting and pipeline generation strategy. My team will take whatever the business has decided from a sales play perspective or from a sales motion perspective, or if we are updating the sales process. My team is not going to create the strategy for, okay, this is what we should do in phase 1, and this is what we need to do in stage 2, this is what we do in stage 3. We will enable that process, but it needs to be articulated at an operations and strategic level, which really those are decisions between, if you think about launching a product, what is product saying it should do? What is marketing saying that the customer fit is out there? What's the total demand? Where are we going to target? What does that look like? What's the total addressable market? And then from a sales perspective, are we aligned on, we believe that our sales organization can go out and sell this much of that product? So once there's alignment across sales, marketing, and product, that strategy coalesces. The strategy is next quarter, we are going to do this takeout campaign, or we are going to go out, we're going to focus on these new customer challenges that we found use cases for where we're seeing a lot of results resonate. And that's what my team will take and say, okay, Q2 or Q3, we are going to focus on going to market with winning in this way. But it really, I do believe that operations and enablement are two distinct functions. Now we tend to sit either under operations or under the sales leadership. And again, I dotted line to the head of sales. I have an open relationship again in all of these organizations, because at the end of the day, it's sales process, product, marketing, as we mentioned. There's so many different individual groups that make up revenue generation. I think as the operations function, though, the strategy and plan and process lives there. For my team, I kind of we're the last mile. We will enable the strategies once they're clearly articulated, once they're documented, but it's very hard to go and do account planning globally if we don't have a standard approach that we want everyone to be using. Do we have an account planning template? Is there an expectation they should be doing this in Salesforce as part of manager one-on-ones? Is there a global expectation that they need to be living and breathing documents as an account plan? And then again, my team has the opportunity to enable those things.
No, amazing. And forgive me, but when I think of revenue, most of the people watching this will know that every year Ebsta launches our B2B benchmark report, and I spent the last couple of weeks really knee deep in the 2025 benchmark report, which is going to be launched in the next couple of weeks. One of the really interesting data points we saw this year is that over 50% of the expansion of the revenue of new revenue coming into organizations over the last 12 months actually came from existing accounts. So customer success isn't just responsible for retaining revenue, but also there's this huge drive now around expanding revenue within existing customers. Do you feel that revenue enablement has a responsibility there for CS as well as new business, or are you really just laser focused on sales?
No, so I'm responsible for pre-sales, post-sales, and partner. So again, I think revenue in my organization. So his title is SVP of Revenue Field Operations. It is the whole. To me, customer success is an extension of the sales team, and I think it's lifecycle selling. At the end of the day, if you are a sales engineer or a solution consultant, or you're a customer sales engineer or consultant post-sales and professional services, at the end of the day, we are all in sales to the customer. And kind of after working for AT&T, I would go see customers, and they'd ask me to fix their fax machine or their phone line was down. I was on the digital media side, had nothing to do with that, but I was the face of AT&T. I think the same holds true for any of our SaaS organizations. Customers don't care what your specific patch is. Okay, I understand that you are not in sales or post-sales, but that, to me, we are responsible, and even in my organization today, we are revenue operations. So my leader who sits under ops is sales ops and CSG ops. We've actually done a really intentional job of calling it field operations, so that there is no question that if you are in the field customer facing in any capacity, your aptitude and your skill set is critical to the success of our customer. Because again, I think, and we've been doing a lot, and so I've been here almost 3 years. we have been moving into the enterprise space. That was one of the things that attracted me to PagerDuty, going from selling a single solution around incident response to actually becoming a platform to manage operations. And so knowing we're taking the mindset of those sellers and customer success managers from, renewing one seat licenses to try and selling CIOs, CTOs across an entire platform is where we as a business recognize that it's lifecycle selling, and having as much engagement from our customer success managers and training them on the same information and messages and approaches are critical. Because again, if you have a rep that tells you one thing, you sign the contract, and all of a sudden your team comes in to deploy it and it's not what you think you purchased, that's a huge miss. And at the end of the day, like, revenue is what keeps the lights on. So it's really critical that there is alignment from prospecting all the way to the renewal.
Absolutely. And so last year we analysed over 5 million opportunities, and what was really interesting, we saw a real step change in the individual contributors that were responsible for winning new logos actually being responsible for holding on to those accounts for the lifetime of the customer. So we've gone from this kind of individual siloed kind of individual single purpose vehicles that are responsible for one piece of the puzzle, and where we now see the market moving to is relationships being built with one individual that holds that relationship for the lifetime of the customer. It's not everywhere, but we saw a huge leap forward that way, and people are expected to individual contributors are responsible for holding on to customers now for much longer than ever before. And I think a lot of that is the customer has to get to a point where they trust the individual if they're going to sign a contract, and so if they're holding on to that relationship, certainly in that first year, where there's the most likely opportunity for upsells and cross-sells, but is a massive win. One of the other data points we saw was we were looking at the personas that were involved in the QBRs with the customers, and fascinatingly, when the last two QBRs before the renewal was with a C-suite, you are 7 times more likely to get the cross-sell upsell opportunity. And if the last two QBRs before the renewal are with a junior resource, they are 4 times more likely to churn. And so it's a fascinating data point to really understand that even in today's world where AI is driving so many things, relationships are more important than ever at driving revenue, especially in B2B sales.
Yeah, I mean, so we're finding the same. The reality is IT is now a board level initiative. Again, prior to COVID, prior to the global outage that happened, right? I think that there were decisions that were able to be made at a lower level based on the price point. That is now, with the Great Recession, all of these things that have happened across the world, there are now more eyes on all of these decisions. And the reality is that is where we as a business, I am trying to up-level my sales organization to be comfortable getting meetings and having conversations with SVPs and our C-level decision makers and personas, because the reality is it becomes a criticality when you're offline. It becomes a criticality when you aren't using the automation and AI that's out there. And if you have conversations with lower level decision makers that aren't able to move the needle or have input and impact, again, it just continues to churn and burn that sales cycle. And so if we can get in earlier, higher in the account, higher in the business, and just as you mentioned, like, regardless of AI, regardless of the BDR and SDR bots that are out there doing the robocalls, our strongest reps and our highest performing strategic teams are truly relationship building. Like, they either have a badge that works, with our customer's logo on it on site because they're there that frequently. I mean, we are, I think everybody is trying to value sell, but it's the concept of consulting and being there as a strategic advisor, and being a strategic advisor across a platform instead of just this, again, kind of one niche, which you and I kind of chatted about earlier. But I think the reality is those relationships, it's okay to not know the answer. If you're a rep or a strategic rep, it is better for you to have a strong relationship with an honest, open, authentic leader where you can say, you know what, I'm pretty sure things do that. I don't have the exact speeds and speeds for you, but I can get those, and I'm going to bring back the right expert with you. But the relationship of earning trust and earning accountability and really, again, having the best interest of your customers' problems and challenges at heart is how we win. I think that's the part where, I mean, we're all in sales. We're all selling something. I mean, internally, I kind of joke, like, I'm selling enablement. portfolio to my internal stakeholders as a business. And I think it's just, again, those relationships and forming and forging those from a rep, from a SC, from a CSM, whatever that role is, having important strategic relationships, again, kind of up and down the stack, are critical to the success of that revenue.
We'll return to the episode in a moment. This podcast is brought to you by Ebsta. Every year, we produce the B2B Sales Benchmarks Report. It provides insights from the analysis of billions of revenue dollars, revealing what attributes drive top sales performance and highlighting where time and money are wasted. To get early access to this year's benchmarks report, sign up for our newsletter at ebsta.com/newsletter. Now, back to Revenue Insights.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. One of the things we do here at Ebsta is score momentum or engagement with different stakeholders by tracking things like the calls, the meetings, the email traffic that takes place. And you see consistently that the top performers are the ones that hold the strongest relationships and are most multi-threaded with the C-suite. And so, a lot of our initiatives are all around trying to, our sweet spot are organizations where you say got 20% of the individual contributors that are hitting quota, and then there's a big gap to the rest of the sales team. And the reason for that gap is there's inconsistencies in the way the sales team are operating, in the way they're communicating, in the way they're engaging, or how well they're able to multi-thread. And so when you show the B and C players what the A players are doing at every stage of the sales cycle, suddenly that drive to win gets them to want to follow that journey. So I think a lot of our role here is about uncovering the secrets that the top performers are just know intrinsically and making it easy for the B and C players to follow suit, because it's amazing how quickly, once they understand what good looks like, how quickly they can replicate that behavior.
Imitation is the most sincere form of flattery, right? I think if people are always much better editors than creators. So we are doing a really intentional job of trying to align with product marketing, and you mentioned operations and that strategy piece. What does the sales process look like in a really strong account? What are the tools, processes, behaviors, messages aligned to those different stage one? Here's what happens. Here's who it happens with. Here's who it happens to. Here's the resource or asset you should be using. We try to do that along. Again, it is a team effort, and it is always gradual, as you know, because process changes, updates. We have new tools added and subtracted at any given time in a sales organization. But we are really trying to expose to our new hires, and from a continuous learning perspective, here's what good looks like. So having Gong libraries where this like rinse and repeat, listen to these calls, listen to the framing, listen to the language. Here are emails or outreach campaigns where we have been able to get C-suite attention, or at least C-suite engagement from the language and the messages in this format. So I just as you mentioned, I think it's really important that we are, again, kind of that decipher layer or that translation layer where we can step by step tell you, if you do these things in this sequential order, using these narratives and these messages and these tools, you are more likely. And I think that's just what you said, like, people want to be successful. Again, no one goes into sales thinking, oh, I am at the bottom of the leaderboard, right? Or I don't want to make it to club this year. The reality is salespeople are hungry, and I think a lot of us go into the industry because we want to help. We want to solve problems. We have that multifaceted approach. And I think too, it is a combination of people, process, and tools. So do you have the right people engaged? Are you following a coordinated and intentional process? And then again, are you using Gong? Are you using LinkedIn Sales Navigator? Just as you mentioned, like, I don't think that at the time a rep is thinking, oh, I'm not multi-threaded in this account necessarily. But the data and the information and the tools that we have can really surface that in a pretty short order, where we can apply that to some pretty critical change quickly.
No, I absolutely agree. So look, measuring the effectiveness of the revenue enablement initiatives can be a bit of a challenge. So what key metrics do you focus on to evaluate the success or otherwise of a specific enablement program? And then is there a way of tying that all the way back towards a revenue performance?
I mean, if I could answer your question, I would have my own enablement agency and we'd be making millions of dollars. I mean, every time I've ever interviewed for a job, like, well, how can you tell me your enablement is effective? The reality is enablement, as I mentioned, is one of many factors when you think about from onboarding to continuous learning to sales process enablement. I mean, we obviously can measure things like ramp time faster, how quickly are they ramping now? Ramping is a fun word. A lot of people have a variety of ways that they define that. Is it time to first deal? Is it time to first 3 deals? Is it when they're actually able to hit their quota? So, and I've definitely noticed in SaaS businesses, like people want a hard and fast. Like I want to know that there is 75% improvement from going to this 3-day onboarding course that they didn't go to before that's going to directly result in them, being able to hit their numbers. Again, as I'd said, I think that there are a multitude of metrics. There's a combination of ramp time. There's a combination of, performance metrics around revenue. What we are trying to do, and I think, again, from a systems and tools process and perspective, is we're trying to create self-paced learning. We're trying to create, on your own consumption. We are doing virtual-led instruction. We are doing in-person enablement. I would say one of the biggest and most important relationships is the expectations between enablement and field leadership or field managers as well. I think that's a component where when we talk about metrics and measuring, again, I can offer a course and yes, everybody loved attending it, but it's the practical application. Did these informations or trainings or pieces of collateral help you successfully close a deal because of it? So we're starting to do more and more of that from a metric perspective. Like, having a Gong library, did this contribute to your skills and behaviors? And I think that's the part where we're really also trying to, from a metrics perspective, do more like competency assessments. Like before the training, here's what I knew. After the training, here's what I know. And that's the part where we can actually show the transfer of knowledge. That's a win. So like knowledge transfer is a huge way that we can track. Okay, they did or did not consume the information or learn the new product. What we're also trying to do now is, from a Gong perspective, are our sales leaders, and this is where from a sales manager development enablement perspective, can we track the behaviors of our sales managers from a coaching and performance conversation? So are they going in and listening to Gong calls, using the sentiment analysis? Are they looking and making sure that they're having the right conversations? Then is there a follow-up where they are coaching them on that? So it is still continues to be for me, again, if you have the secret sauce and you've talked to some revenue enablement leader who was like, oh yes, I can do this training on a Tuesday and on Friday, our numbers are up and to the right. But I think it really is a combination of, I think it is around aligned strategic processes, aligned prioritization, and then being really intentional. Again, if they want us to move the number on automation, or we need to move the number on this target specific count, that's where we have to spend our time, resources, and energy. And then we're able to track. And again, it's not overnight, as we know as well. An enterprise sale is going to take longer. A 6-figure sale is going to take longer than a 5-figure sale. So I think patience is one of those things as well that is hard. And it's hard in sales, but I would say it's a constant evolution and constant awareness of the multiple things that are happening at any given time. And I think just what you were saying about these high performers, are the high performers the ones taking the training? Are the high performers the ones that are attending our sessions? Are the high performers the ones that are doing their own? Are they going to conferences? Are they going to trade shows? Are they also, I think that unfortunately a lot of, we talk about the sales business is one of the only ones where we don't practice. Surgeons practice, firemen practice. It's a huge thing I talk to with my sales teams. Like, an attorney doesn't go into court and not run through their conversation they want to have to the jury. They practice. And so we are trying to do on our side a lot of that. Like, you need to practice in front of each other and practice with your leaders, practice with Gong on your own, right? But all of those things, if we can show the metrics of the people who are doing the right behaviors, and then show their numbers winning, that's where we're able to kind of show those metrics.
I love the thinking. And it reminds me, again, I've been knee deep in the 2025 benchmark report, and we spent a lot of time looking at qualification methodologies and how well or badly they're being adopted. And we saw a huge push in the last 12 months, lots and lots of training around whether it's MEDPIC or BANT or SPICed and so on. And there was a lot of energy going into that. But then when you look at the data afterwards, because there was a requirement for the reps, not just to go through the exercise of actually capturing the information or asking the right questions, but the admin afterwards to then fill it out consistently in the system of record, almost consistently across the board failed. But the failure wasn't in the teaching. The failure was in expecting the salespeople to be really good admins. And so one of the things we did at Ebsta last year, we came up with a way of integrating with those Gong recordings and auto-populating into a Salesforce record, into the opportunity, how well or badly the customer had been qualified under whichever methodology you want. So you can imagine it's not a huge leap to use these kind of prompt engines to effectively ask the call recording a set of questions and then qualify and then score how well the customer's been qualified. And if you, as soon as you introduce that, suddenly it's now gamified. If I don't get a score of, say, 70 or above, I don't get to lead discovery. Now, all of a sudden, I only, we actually introduced kind of a green thumbs up and a red thumbs down. And you see the sales reps, they only get 1 or 2 red thumbs down before they change their approach. And they go out of their way to ask the right questions and really qualify the customer better because they know the call recording is going to score them back into Salesforce. And so all of a sudden, the adoption of these methodologies went from very low to almost 100%. Because they could see the impact. They knew it was positive. They could see that the best performers were doing a lot of this qualification. But because the data wasn't being captured consistently, it was all kind of gut feel. And then overnight, once they were told they're not allowed to leave discovery until they've done the right thing, they're all after those green thumbs up. So it's amazing how small tweaks and enabling these people with kind of gamification and AI really helps them to achieve a much better outcome in a much shorter amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really, just call recording technology in general has been such a game changer, I think, to so many businesses. Initially, I would say 15 years ago, when I started in this industry, call recording it's because someone is going to be terminated from their job, right? Like they want to listen to your calls. They want to do quality assurance, right? Like quality assurance to ensure that you are getting the service and that you deserve. That's not what it's being like. I think we've definitely transitioned the mindset of our sales teams from it to being a big brother to, oh my gosh, it's like literally having a stenographer there during my sales call that can help me take the notes. It can help me summarize it and put it in, again, from a sentiment analysis to a totally different place. And I think that is a part for us the same way. We've got multiple tools internally, from call recording to internal AI tools that I can run my scripts through to kind of spit out, again, that information where, I love the way you framed it, because we're expecting salespeople who are typically hyperactive, very disorganized, often distracted, relationship builders, and now we're asking them to be exceptional Salesforce, input individuals. And so I love the technology components of it. And again, I think this is where the people, process, and tools, because to your point, we can train it. I know that they understand what I mean when I say champion. I understand what they when we talk about paper process, but bringing that to life and then inserting the data is to your point, that's a whole different metric. That it's not that they're not doing it, they're just not recording it. And so and you're right, gamification, another way to drive sales behavior. Give me compensation and put me on the top of a board somewhere, right?
Inevitably, we now live in a remote world. And have you seen the world of sales enablement change with the fact that you have to enable people that are based all over the world? And what do you think the future looks like over the next year or two when you look at the emerging technologies and these kind of data-driven strategies that we're looking at now?
Yeah, it's a great question, because the reality is, when I was at Red Hat, I went into work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, 8 to 5, actually, 8 to 6, right? It was a very different world in 2020. I think, and specifically, I've been in a global role though since I started in enablement, and even if I wasn't on the ground 7 months out of the year, I would say teleconferencing has always been a thing for global companies. The enablement piece is what's changed. And I think that's the part where, like, going back to old school training and development, people who are in a room with each other being trained and doing practice and practical application is always a better way to ensure that they are being trained. So for me, it's definitely a hybrid. Today I am my team is almost 100% virtual. I was hired during the global pandemic, so I didn't meet with anyone in person. Whereas before, you had 7 or 10 interviews and you flew somewhere and you met everyone, and then you went to global headquarters for onboarding. That has all shifted. That has all changed. But I will say, and I have the support of the leaders that I work for, as soon as we possibly could, financially and from a timing perspective, we did start ensuring we are going to do onboarding, sales onboarding, field onboarding in person. That is a big part of. So we are doing, I've got a global audience, a global remit. So we either we'll do regional sessions, or I'll do a global one at headquarters in San Francisco, again, kind of depending on our hiring numbers. And again, like where in the world and from a timing perspective that's happening. I think that in-person training is still really, to me, it is a very critical component of success, at least, again, kind of the very beginning. We also, it's obviously sales kickoff season, revenue kickoff season right now. There's still a debate of, it's all over LinkedIn, like, do you maintain the virtual kickoff because the budget was never put back in to start traveling people all around the world together? So we are doing a hybrid here at PagerDuty. We're going to do a couple hours of virtual along with the company kickoff. And then we are doing regional sessions where we're doing account planning. We are doing practicals. We are doing Shark Tank pitch off competitions. Because the reality is, as I was just saying, like, practice is such a critical component. And for whatever reason, the sales profession, we just practice on our customers all day, every day. So I can say that I think that I don't know the enablement is ever going to go back to 5 days a week inside of an office. I think that the hybrid world, the global world, and again, if you're going to work for a global organization, I don't have an advocate that's in Asia. So at some point, somebody on my team, myself, like, we are going to go there. I wish we could go more as we continue to grow. I might, the org model that we had at Red Hat was, I had a regional advocate in region where we would create global programs out of HQ, and then we would disseminate globally. We're going to get there with PagerDuty. I know we're hiring fast. I have some partners in the regions who are like, it would be great to dedicate a resource to do enablement here in EMEA instead of it being a part-time job for a lot of our managers. But obviously, like, at a 1,500 person organization, that's you're at a different place and space. So I think enablement is going to continue to evolve. I still believe that there is importance in learning in person. We're always now going to have virtual instructor-led training. With AI technology now, I think that there's also so many things that can be done, like not even having an enablement person in the room, but we can still do a lot of things as a business that I think all roads lead back to what you and I were saying, is around relationships and being able to have a relationship with a senior sales rep or a senior sales executive, and having met them my first couple of weeks at work, it's a lot easier to reach across Slack and say, hey, when we were in the kitchen in the office and we were talking about this thing. I think there's like that can't be replicated.
Agreed. No, I absolutely agree. So look, as we're about to wrap up, but we get a lot of people subscribing to the podcast and who are aspiring to step into kind of leadership roles in this sales enablement space. Is there a particular key piece of advice you give them on that journey? What would you suggest as to ensure success in that kind of fast changing landscape that we're all playing in now?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I have everyone that I hire, almost everyone has sales experience. And I think I would say the commonality in all of us is curiosity. We're curious and we're helpers. So I think if you think about your skills and behaviors and thinking about pivoting from being in a sales role or a technical role, or maybe even some sort of corporate role, corporate function, I think that enablement is a great place if you want to stay close to the customers and the sellers. You also want to be helpful. And I think that's the part where there are a lot of times I have a lot of team members who are like, we've already trained this 7 times, or I've told them this 10 times. Patience, curiosity, and again, the willingness to recognize things don't, unfortunately, osmosis doesn't necessarily work. You cannot send them an email and ask them to put it under their pillow and they will automatically know it. But I think if
that's next year's AI.
Yeah, the next year's AI for sure. I definitely feel like enablement is such a great space, and it is continuing to evolve. Enablement, I think that's a big thing too. Enablement means a lot of different things to a lot of people, and part of it is about the education of. There are a lot of businesses actually right now. I get calls from recruiters who are hiring for an operations and enablement leader. And I'm like, that's not the same person usually. I kind of describe it as like left brain and right brain. You've got someone who wants to train the field and help the field and be with them on the hands-on. A lot of times it's different than somebody who's process-oriented, who wants to create the operational rigor. And so I think that, again, like when you are going into the enablement space, it's really important to ask the questions like whatever that venue or job opportunity or individual is hiring for, to really clarify, what are the goals, skills, and behaviors that they're thinking that enablement is going to be able to achieve, and making sure they align with what, to me, like opportunity, passion, and talent. Like, do they align with the things that you want to do as a career?
Yeah, I think one of my big takeaways from this conversation is really understanding that there is such a big difference between RevOps, which is very process and and strategic and perhaps long-term thinking, and then enablement, which is very people-based and really about helping those individuals to achieve the goals they've been set and to be successful. So I think that's a fantastic outcome of today's session. So thank you so much for joining us. Ivy, if people want to get in touch with you and have another conversation, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. So my LinkedIn is open. Please feel free to, I'm Ivy Peacock Holt on LinkedIn, and feel free to message me there. It should be open for you all to send me a note.
Very good. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us today. Lots of learns and takeaways. We really appreciate your energy today. And thank you for joining us. And I know the community will really appreciate your input. So, and good luck in your 2025 year.
Thank you so much, Guy, for having me.
Thanks for listening to Revenue Insights from Ebsta. If you want to learn more from some of the brightest minds on how to predictably and efficiently grow revenue, then subscribe to our newsletter. We'll deliver actionable insights straight to your inbox. Go to ebsta.com/newsletter. See you soon.